When I think back to the absurdity of my life, nothing compares to the day I got forced into marrying Emily Carter, my sworn enemy since high school, the girl who used to sharpen every word like a blade just to get under my skin, and now suddenly she had a marriage certificate binding her name to mine, and as if that wasn't enough punishment from fate, she decided her new life mission was to disgust me every chance she got, starting with calling me husband every single day in a tone that made my skin crawl, and at first I tried to hold it in. I clenched my teeth and told myself it was temporary, that I could endure it, but on the third day of marriage when she purred husband in front of my parents at our Long Island villa as if she were auditioning for the role of the perfect daughter-in-law, I snapped and fired back a loud wife, just to see her choke on her own medicine, only she didn't choke at all. Her eyes went wide, her cheeks flushed, and instead of retreating she leaned in. With that infuriating smile that screamed she'd just won some invisible battle, asking me to repeat it, daring me to keep calling her that, and suddenly I was the one trapped, not knowing whether to laugh or run, because somehow the title that was supposed to disgust her only made her more relentless, like feeding gasoline to a fire that had been waiting to burn me alive, and that was the beginning of the madness. You think I'm exaggerating, but imagine having your worst enemy not only share your bed but also weaponize the word husband in front of everyone you know, like at Jason Miller's birthday dinner in Manhattan, where every friend in our circle gawked at us as if we were part of some twisted reality show, whispering about how impossible it was that Ethan Parker and Emily Carter, the duo that couldn't stand each other for more than 5 minutes, were suddenly a married couple, and the questions came at me non-stop. Bro, did you really marry Emily? No way, you're lying, come on, tell us the truth. And after being interrogated for the 10th time I lost my patience and admitted it in front of everyone. Yeah, we got married, it's real, go ahead and laugh. And boy did they laugh. They clutched their chests like the world had turned upside down. One guy even said the sun must be rising in the west tomorrow, and just when I thought I'd contained the embarrassment, Emily made her entrance, heels clicking, hair cascading down like some queen walking into her kingdom, sliding her hand onto my shoulder like she owned me, and in the softest, most nauseating voice she whispered in my ear, husband, what are you talking about? And the room froze, eyes bulged, jaws dropped, and even I stared at her like she'd lost her damn mind, but she kept that calm, angelic smile plastered on her face, like she wasn't detonating a bomb in front of my entire friend group. And when one of them nervously said we were just discussing the sudden marriage, Emily giggled like she'd been waiting for this spotlight. Why else would we get married? She teased, dragging her words out before delivering the fatal blow. Because I like him, of course, I've always liked him, and my brain short-circuited, because this wasn't just trolling me anymore, this was publicly branding me as the fool who'd been secretly loved by his enemy, and the way she said it light, casual, like confessing was no big deal made me want to slam my head into the cake. That night I exploded. We argued in our room at the villa, me yelling that she was disgusting, her blinking those innocent eyes like she didn't understand why calling me husband was so bad, and every time I shouted at her to stop she doubled down, repeating husband like a mantra. Even on text when I was hanging out with Nathan Reed at a bar, she sent cringe lines like, husband, what time will you be home, I miss you, followed by, nights are lonely without you here, and even, I'm burning up alone, took some Advil, hurry back to hold me, and I almost threw my phone at the wall, shoving it at Nathan to confirm I wasn't crazy, but instead of agreeing, he laughed and said she was actually being cute, that she probably liked me and was just trying to get my attention, and when I threatened to leave he stopped me, insisting I fight fire with fire, call her wife, see how she handles it. And suddenly the genius of his idea lit up in my head like divine revelation, so when I returned home and saw Emily sitting straight-backed in pajamas, sipping tea with my parents like the poster child for well-mannered daughters-in-law, I decided to strike, smiling sweetly as I leaned close and said, wife, let's go upstairs, didn't you say you missed me? And the look on her face was priceless, wide-eyed disbelief, fingers twitching against her mug, like I'd just pulled the ground out from under her feet, and I nearly laughed out loud watching her flush red and stammer, what did you just call me? And I doubled down, wife, what else would I call you? Pretending innocence while savoring her rare loss of composure, and later, when we were alone in the bedroom, I pinned her against the door, chanting, wife, 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 with all the theatrical cruelty I could muster, expecting her to crumble, but instead she whispered hoarsely, if you like calling me that, I don't mind, and I froze. Because this girl never surrendered, never let me win, and yet here she was giving me the rope to hang myself, leaving me no clue whether she was mocking me, testing me, or God forbid telling the truth. That night I tried to sleep, but Emily kept prodding me in the dark, asking if I wanted to call her wife again, even begging, "Please, husband, just one more time, call me wife again," and I stared at the ceiling wondering if Nathan had been right, if maybe, just maybe, she was enjoying this too much because she actually liked me, but then again, this was Emily Carter, the girl who'd spent years making my life hell, so how the hell could I believe she was capable of anything but mischief, and yet, lying there with her breathing softly beside me, her arm brushing mine across the invisible, "do not cross" line, we'd set on the bed like middle schoolers, I couldn't shake the thought that the line between hate and something more was starting to blur in the worst possible way. You'd think after that insane first week things would calm down, but with Emily Carter there's no such thing as peace, because just when I thought she dropped the husband-wife game, she escalated it like she was competing in some twisted Olympics of humiliation, and I swear this woman wakes up every day brainstorming new ways to mess with me, like she'll send me texts dripping with fake sweetness while I'm trying to hang out with the guys. Stuff like, "Husband, don't stay out too late, I can't sleep without you," or, "It's so cold in the bed, hurry back to keep me warm," and even though every syllable screamed parody, Nathan Reed just grinned like he'd cracked the code, saying, "Dude, she's into you, no woman wastes this much energy unless she cares," and I told him to shut up before I walked out, but his words kept echoing in my head, and I hated that he might not be wrong, so when he told me to try flipping the game, to call her wife in return, I decided to go all in and see if I could finally get the upper hand. And oh boy, the first time I did it in front of my parents, Emily froze like she'd seen a ghost, her composure cracking for the first time, and I felt like I just scored the game-winning touchdown, so later in our bedroom I doubled down, pinning her against the door, chanting, "Wife, wife, wife," until my throat went dry, but instead of breaking, she whispered back, "If you like calling me that, I don't mind," and I swear my brain malfunctioned, because how do you fight someone who turns every weapon into ammunition, and worse, what if Nathan was right, what if she actually enjoyed this because deep down she really liked me? That thought wouldn't leave me alone, especially when she kept needling me at night, pretending she was half asleep but whispering, "Say it again, call me wife," and when I refused she clutched my arm and begged, "Please, husband, just one more time," and I started to wonder if I was the one losing the game. But it didn't stop there, because a few nights later at another friend's gathering, Samantha Green had the genius idea of playing Truth or Dare, and of course everyone decided it would be hilarious to grill me and Emily since we were the newlyweds, so when the bottle spun to me, they demanded she ask the question, and Emily, wearing that smug little high school uniform for the throwback theme party, leaned in with a fake sweet smile and asked, "Husband, the post you made on social media saying you'd love me forever, was it true?" And the whole room roared with laughter, chanting for me to answer, and I felt like a cornered animal, but I gritted my teeth and said, "Yes," just to shut them up, which only made Emily's eyes sparkle like she'd won a prize. What no one knew was that I'd come prepared for my revenge, because tucked in my backpack was a fake love letter I'd forged, made to look like Emily had written it to me back in high school, and I planned to drop it, accidentally, so everyone would think she'd secretly liked me first, flipping the narrative on its head, and when the moment came, I nudged Nathan to pass me my bag across the circle, made a show of fumbling it, and boom, the letter spilled out onto the floor, scooped up by Jason Miller, the resident troublemaker, who immediately read the name on the envelope and shouted, "Wait, is this from Emily?" And the room exploded, everyone demanding to see, and I played dumb, blinking innocently at her and asking, "Wife, did you write this?" while she glared daggers at me, clearly knowing it was a setup, but before she could deny it, Samantha chimed in, "Oh yeah, I remember when she was writing this back in high school," and I almost fell out of my chair from shock because apparently my fake plan had uncovered a real memory, and suddenly my dumb prank had more truth than I'd ever expected, leaving me staring at Emily like I didn't even know her anymore. But Emily, being Emily, didn't flinch. She calmly picked up the letter and started reading it out loud in the cheesiest voice imaginable, saying lines like, "I keep dreaming about you, I think I've fallen for you," while the crowd howled and chanted for us to kiss, and my face burned so hot I thought I'd pass out, but when I turned to her, she gazed at me with those steady eyes and declared, "Yes, I wrote it, yes, I liked him back then, yes. I fought with him just to get his attention, and yes. I even pushed for this marriage because I liked him," and the room went insane, everyone screaming about how it was a real-life enemies to lovers story, while I sat there stunned, because sure, my plan had worked too well, but hearing her admit it out loud, even if partly for show, made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't laugh off. On the ride home I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I finally asked her directly, "So you really wrote that letter?" And she shrugged, staring out the window, saying softly, "Yeah, I liked you once but not anymore," and those 3 words wrecked me more than I care to admit, because suddenly I wasn't relieved she didn't like me, I was furious, hurt even, that she could just turn it off like a switch, and all night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, obsessing over why it bothered me so much, because if I didn't like her, why should I care that she didn't like me either? But the truth not it may cared, and that scared the hell out of me, because maybe, just maybe, I was falling into her trap without even realizing it, and I hated the thought that the line between hate and something dangerously close to love was becoming thinner by the day. I couldn't shake her words from my head, "I liked you once, but not anymore," like hell, they haunted me for days, gnawing at my chest, and it didn't make sense because if I didn't like Emily Carter, why did it sting so much to hear she didn't like me either? Why did my pride twist like I'd been dumped from a relationship I never even admitted to being in? And maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd spent so many years locked in battles with her that I didn't know who I was without her as my rival, but Nathan Reed didn't help at all, he just kept saying she obviously still liked me, that all her taunting and games were just a cover, and when I asked why she would deny it, he smirked and told me to test her, to push her, to see how she reacted, and like the idiot I am, I listened. That night we were staying at her family's Manhattan penthouse instead of my Long Island villa, and the bed there was even bigger, the infamous, lying down the middle, we drew on the first night of marriage suddenly looking like a canyon, and I lay there in the dark, debating if I should even try, until the thought of her coolly saying she didn't like me anymore lit a fire in my chest, and before I knew it, I was rolling across that bed like a thief in the night, inch by inch, until finally my arm brushed hers, and for one terrifying second I froze, wondering if I'd crossed the point of no return. That's when her voice came, low and rough in the dark, "Ethan, what are you doing?" And my heart nearly leapt out of my throat, but I played dead, pretending to be asleep, holding my breath like some teenager sneaking into the wrong dorm, except she didn't let me off the hook. She shifted slightly and whispered, "I know you're not sleeping," and I cursed under my breath, still not answering, hoping maybe she'd drop it. But then she murmured something that made my entire body seize up, "You're pressing against me," and it hit me what she meant, and I bolted upright, scrambling to apologize, but before I could, she grabbed my wrist and yanked me back down beside her, whispering in a tone that was equal parts dangerous and playful, "So which shameless guy rolled into my bed in the middle of the night?" And I swear I couldn't breathe, my entire brain fried, so I defaulted to the coward's excuse, muttering, "I was drunk. I don't remember," but she didn't buy it, of course she didn't. Emily never lets me escape, she pinned me with those sharp eyes even in the dim light and asked, "Why did you come here, Ethan?" And when I couldn't answer, she smirked and whispered, "Forget it," then before I knew it her lips crashed into mine, no warning, no hesitation, just pure aggression, and it wasn't some sweet romantic kiss either, it was wild, biting, stealing every ounce of air from me until my head spun, and I thought I'd push her away but instead my hands froze at her waist. Feeling the heat of her skin through thin fabric, and she pressed harder, growling against my mouth, "You started this, you deal with it," and I lost all sense of time, of logic, of hatred, until she finally pulled back, lips swollen, breath hot against my neck, whispering, "I've waited too long to stop now," and it hit me like a freight train. She liked me, she'd always liked me, maybe she'd never stopped, and the denial was just another one of her games, except now I wasn't sure if I was still playing or if I'd already lost. The craziest part. After that kiss, she acted like nothing happened, curling up beside me, stealing my pillow, smirking when I sat there stunned, and I couldn't sleep the entire night, replaying every second, every taste, every whisper, wondering if I'd imagined it, until the morning when she leaned in casually to peck my cheek and teased, "Good morning, husband, sleep well," and my entire face burned like fire, because what the hell was I supposed to say? That my enemy had just stolen my first real kiss and I wasn't sure if I hated it or if I wanted more. The truth is, I wanted more, and that realization terrified me, because I could handle fighting Emily, I could handle her mockery, but I couldn't handle the idea of falling for her, not when we were supposed to be nothing more than a temporary arrangement, not when our marriage was built on family politics and lies, not when my pride still screamed she was the girl who tormented me for years. Yet now she was the only one whose voice I craved in the silence, the only one who could make me feel both furious and alive in the same breath, and as I lay there pretending to scroll through my phone, ignoring her humming while she brushed her hair, I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't just a game anymore, not for her, and definitely not for me. After that night, pretending things were normal was impossible, at least for me, but Emily Carter, queen of shamelessness, acted like nothing had changed, still calling me husband whenever she felt like it, still sliding into my space as if our marriage had been born out of love instead of family politics, and the worst part was how easily she carried it off, smiling innocently in front of friends, cracking jokes with my parents, never once letting the world see how far she had already crossed the line with me. But I wasn't built for that level of calm, not when my head replayed her kiss over and over until even my pride couldn't keep up with the denial, so I turned to Nathan Reed for answers like the desperate fool I was, and of course he laughed in my face, saying I should stop acting like a middle schooler with a crush, that if I wanted to know whether she liked me, I should test her properly, push her until she couldn't fake it anymore, and I hated how simple he made it sound, but the idea stuck, gnawing at me until I finally decided to act. That night at her family's penthouse, the air between us thick with silence, I tried to play it cool, scrolling on my phone while she got ready for bed, but the moment she slid under the covers, I couldn't hold it in, so I rolled closer, breaking the invisible line we had drawn weeks ago, and when she turned to me with that knowing smirk, my nerves nearly killed me, but I pressed on, leaning close enough for her perfume to cloud my brain, and when she whispered, "What are you doing, husband?" I swallowed hard and lied, "Nothing. Just tired," though the heat in my face gave me away, and she chuckled low, clearly amused that I was struggling while she had all the control. I don't know what switch flipped in me, maybe it was Nathan's words or maybe it was the way her eyes glimmered in the dim light, but I reached out, fingers brushing hers, then sliding up her arm, testing how far I could go, and she froze for a second before letting out a sharp breath, catching my wrist just as I was about to pull away, and instead of shoving me back like I expected, she tugged me forward, closing the space between us until her lips brushed mine again, softer this time, slower. As if she wanted to savor the moment, and it was nothing like the wild aggression of the night before, it was worse, because this time it felt real, intentional, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just melted into it until she finally broke away, pressing her forehead to mine and whispering, "Still pretending you don't like me," and I hated that my silence answered for me. After that, everything shifted, the balance of power tilting so fast it made me dizzy, because now Emily had proof that I wouldn't push her away, that no matter how much I barked at her in public or rolled my eyes at her antics, the truth was I was already halfway gone, and she used it mercilessly, calling me husband at breakfast, brushing her hand down my back when we passed each other in the hall, leaning on my shoulder during car rides just to watch me squirm, and I could feel the walls I'd built for years crumbling, piece by piece, until even my denial started sounding like a joke. But then things got complicated, because our little bubble didn't stay private, not when her missing sister suddenly returned and my runaway brother crawled back into the picture, and the whole truth about our so-called replacement marriage started unraveling like a bad soap opera, except when I confronted my brother about it, furious that he'd bailed and left me to take his place, he just laughed and said, "Don't act like you're the victim, Ethan, everyone could see you and Emily were meant to end up together, it was obvious, you just refused to admit it, and the worst part was I couldn't argue, because deep down I knew he was right, I had accepted the marriage too quickly, too easily, without the outrage I should have had if it were truly forced, and that realization hit me harder than any of Emily's games ever did. The night after that conversation, I found myself walking into her office at Carter Group headquarters, my chest tight, my palms sweaty, and when she looked up from behind her desk, her eyes lighting up like she'd been waiting for me all day, she teased, "Did my husband come to check on me?" And I wanted to bark at her to stop, to remind her we were in public, but the words got stuck in my throat, because I hadn't come to fight, I'd come to confess, to lay down the sword I'd been swinging at her for years. So I sat on her couch, staring at my hands, and muttered, "Emily, I think maybe I liked you before, I just didn't realize it," and the silence that followed almost killed me, but when I finally glanced up, she wasn't laughing or smirking, she was just watching me with this raw, open expression I'd never seen from her before, like I'd just handed her something she'd wanted for years, and when I stumbled to my feet, embarrassed, trying to leave, she shot out of her chair, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me into her arms, whispering against my ear, "Don't think you can drop that on me and walk away," before kissing me again, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that steals every ounce of fight from your body, and in that moment, standing in her office with her arms around me, I finally admitted the truth to myself. I wasn't just trapped in this marriage, I was choosing it, choosing her, whether I liked it or not. By the time Emily Carter kissed me in her office and whispered that I couldn't just walk out after dropping a confession like that, I realized I'd crossed the point of no return, because for weeks I'd been fighting her games, denying every flush of heat, every late-night thought, every stolen glance, but now I couldn't pretend anymore, not after admitting to myself that maybe I had liked her all along. Maybe I'd been too stubborn, too blind, too wrapped up in the narrative of us being enemies. To see that every fight, every insult, every petty jab was just another twisted form of attention we couldn't stop giving each other, and now that the truth was out, Emily had the upper hand, not just because she knew but because she'd been waiting for me to catch up, and she wasn't about to let me off easy. From that day forward she doubled down, calling me husband not only at home but in front of friends, colleagues, even strangers, leaning into me like we'd been some fairy tale couple all along, and the craziest part was how natural it started to feel, how my instinct to roll my eyes and snap at her slowly shifted into biting my lip to stop a smile, how I started replying, "Wife," without even realizing it, and every time I did, her eyes would gleam like she'd just won a championship. But the outside world wasn't done with us yet, because gossip has a way of twisting everything, and soon enough the story floating around our circle was that I'd been secretly in love with her for years, that all my arguments and coldness were just desperate attempts to get her attention, and that Emily had been the long-suffering goddess who finally gave me a chance, and I wanted to scream at the absurdity, but Emily just shrugged, saying, "What's the problem, Ethan? People thinking you love me too much, how's that a bad thing?" And I wanted to argue but couldn't, because maybe it wasn't bad, maybe it was better than them thinking we were enemies forced into a sham marriage, and besides, the look in her eyes when she said it made me feel like there was no escaping her, not that I wanted to anymore. Still, I wasn't about to let her keep all the power, so when Samantha Green threw a retro-themed party and we all showed up in our old high school uniforms, I saw my chance for revenge, slipping a forged love letter into my bag, planning to, accidentally, let it spill out so everyone would think Emily had secretly been into me first, flipping the narrative back onto her, but like every plan I've ever made against her, it backfired spectacularly, because not only did Samantha back up the letter as real, Emily went along with it, calmly reading the words out loud and confessing in front of everyone that yes, she'd liked me since high school, yes, she fought me just to keep my attention, and yes, she pushed for this marriage because she didn't want to let me go. And while the room exploded with cheers and teasing, I sat there numb, my mind spiraling between triumph and panic, because hearing her say it out loud made something deep in me ache with a strange mix of relief and dread. On the ride home, when I finally asked her why she'd admit it so easily, she turned her face to the window and said in a flat voice, "I liked you once, but not anymore," and those words hollowed me out, leaving me tossing and turning all night, furious that it mattered so much, furious that her rejection cut deeper than it should, because if I didn't like her then why did it feel like I just lost something I never had, and I hated how desperate I sounded when I confronted her later, asking why she would say that, and she just smirked, asking, "Why, does it bother you if I don't like you anymore?" And I denied it with every ounce of pride I had, but the look in her eyes told me she saw right through me. That was when Nathan's words came back to me, "Test her, push her, you'll know," and so I did, breaking the invisible line in bed, pressing closer, brushing her arm, daring her to shove me away, and when she didn't, when she pulled me into that kiss that nearly stole the air from my lungs, I knew the truth was obvious. She hadn't stopped liking me, maybe she'd never stopped, maybe she'd just been waiting for me to admit it. And the thought both thrilled and terrified me. After that, there was no going back. Nights turned into tangled sheets and whispered words, mornings into stolen glances over breakfast, afternoons into secret touches that made even simple car rides unbearable, and Emily reveled in it, calling me husband like it was the sweetest word in the world, teasing me when I blushed, mocking me when I tried to stay stoic, and every time I snapped back, wife, she lit up like she'd won the lottery. But then my brother came back, and her sister too, and suddenly all the shadows of how we'd ended up here in the first place came rushing back, the replacement marriage, the family politics, the lies we told our friends, and when I cornered my brother demanding why he'd dumped this on me, he just grinned and said, "Don't act like you're suffering, Ethan, you and Emily were always headed here, everyone knew it but you." And the worst part was he was right, because deep down I'd known it too, I just didn't want to admit it. That night, restless, I walked into Emily's office at Carter Group headquarters, my chest tight, my palms sweaty, and when she looked up at me with those bright eyes, teasing, "Did my husband come to check on me?" I almost lost my nerve, but I forced the words out anyway. "I think maybe I liked you before, I just didn't realize it," and watching her face soften, watching her smile falter into something raw and vulnerable, it hit me harder than any kiss, any touch, because Emily Carter wasn't just my enemy, wasn't just my wife by contract, she was the one person who had always been there, fighting me, challenging me, making me feel something when no one else could, and now that I'd admitted the truth, I knew there was no undoing it, no walking back, only moving forward into whatever chaos came next, and when she stood, grabbed my wrist, and kissed me like she was sealing a deal, I realized that maybe this whole time I hadn't been trapped in her games, maybe I'd been waiting to lose to her all along. After that day in her office when I finally confessed what I should have realized years ago, life with Emily Carter turned into something I couldn't have imagined even in my wildest dreams, because the girl I used to call my worst enemy was now the woman who curled into my side every night, who stole kisses in between arguments, who called me husband, with a smile that made my chest tighten, and I couldn't even pretend to hate it anymore, not when I'd already surrendered half my pride to her. And the other half was slipping faster than I could catch it, but of course Emily being Emily, she didn't let me live in peace, not for a single day, because once she figured out I was hooked she escalated her games, testing me, teasing me, pushing boundaries until I didn't know where the line even was anymore, and what started as her calling me husband, turned into her whispering, master, in my ear late at night, her smirk daring me to punish her, and no matter how much I grumbled, no matter how often I told her to stop, she knew exactly how to get under my skin, and the truth was I didn't want her to stop, because every ridiculous line, every shameless act pulled me deeper into a world where she was the only person who could drive me insane and still make me feel alive. The problem was, our marriage had never just been about us, it had started as a replacement arrangement, a desperate cover-up for her sister's disappearance and my brother's cowardice, and when the two of them finally came back, all the old wounds ripped open, the lies and secrets spilling out like poison, and I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my brother just looked at me with that smug grin and said, "You think you were forced, Ethan? You think this wasn't exactly where you wanted to end up? You could have fought harder, but you didn't, and you know why, and damn it, he was right, because if it had been anyone else, I never would have gone through with it, never would have agreed so fast, but with Emily, even when I swore I hated her, even when I wanted to strangle her, part of me never wanted to let her go, and realizing that made me angrier at myself than at him. Still, I couldn't escape the feeling that maybe the whole thing had been an elaborate trap, that our families had seen what we refused to and pushed us together, and when I asked Emily if she'd known, she just laughed, sliding into my lap and kissing me breathless before whispering, "Does it matter? You're mine now," and somehow that was enough to quiet every question, every doubt, because the truth was I didn't care anymore, not when her lips on mine made the world spin, not when her voice in my ear made every wall crumble. It's funny, looking back, how much I fought her, how convinced I was that she was nothing but an annoyance, a lifelong rival, when in reality she'd been the only constant in my life, the only person who never left, who never stopped pushing me, who never let me sink into complacency, and maybe that was why I fell, not in spite of her games but because of them, because in her shamelessness there was honesty, in her taunts there was care, and in her laughter there was the warmth I didn't know I'd been searching for. Now she leans over me at night, her hair brushing my face, her voice soft but commanding, "Ethan Parker, my husband, my master, my everything, didn't even think about leaving me," and I laugh, pulling her closer, whispering back that she's insane, that she's impossible, but inside I know the truth, that I'm the one who can't leave, that I'm the one who lost the game the moment she called me husband for the first time. Because somewhere between hating her guts and faking indifference, I fell in love with her, and maybe that was the real twist all along, that what began as a forced marriage, a joke to everyone else, became the one thing I never knew I wanted, and as I lie there with her tangled in my arms, her lips brushing mine one more time, I realize that if being with Emily Carter means losing every battle, every argument, every ounce of pride, then I'll gladly lose 1,000 times over. Because in the end I don't need to win, I just need her, and that's the kind of defeat I'll take any day.